Hi, and welcome everyone to wholesoulschool and Foundation's first Fireside Chats for September 2019. My name is Marie Mohler, and I am an author, intuitive, and co-founder of wholesoulschool and Foundation. I am here with my co-host and co-founder, Lacy Frazer, who is a clinical psychologist by training and a practicing life and leadership coach and consultant today. We want to remind our listeners that the mission of wholesoulschool and Foundation is to educate, enrich, integrate, and liberate the soul. We also support programs, projects, and products that are specifically designed to educate, empower, and inspire people whose lives have been impacted by incarceration. Our teachings aim to provide hope, healing, and positive possibilities to people worldwide. So I first want to welcome everyone to this call today and to welcome Lacy to the conversation.
Thank you, Marie. It's wonderful to be here again.
Yeah, it's good to be back. This month, we are going to be focusing on the theme, engaging our spiritual nature. Many of you listening might recall, as we have journeyed these past 8 months together through our podcasts and conversations, we have spotlighted the ego and the conditioned self, our clever ego's defenses, the armor we wear, self-awareness, understanding our shadow and our light, the journey of personal transformation, energy and the law of attraction, taking 100% responsibility for creating our reality, visioning and manifesting, and last month we talked about integrating science and spirituality. And it is time to once again move into another chapter of our journeys. It is time to take that 18-inch journey, as people say, from our heads to our hearts, and to begin to explore a bit more about how we can engage our spiritual nature. For countless centuries, mystics, indigenous people from different faiths, etc., have sought various ways to connect with the life force, light, universal field of energy and consciousness, and God or multiple gods as a way of connecting with a higher purpose and a higher meaning for their existence here on earth. And many are still searching today. In my experience as an intuitive and an empath, that journey from our heads to our hearts is where the path to higher living and more joyful and more meaningful lives exist. Today we are going to highlight our 5 physical senses that we all know about. And we are also going to spotlight a 6th sense that an amazing speaker, teacher, and author named Sonia Choquette calls our intuition or our vibes. It is a 6th sense that I myself, Lacy, refer to as intuition, our spiritual nature, our higher self, our divine inner compass, and our sentient guidance system. It is important that we begin to uncover this language of this 6th sense, going beyond our 5 senses, for these next steps in our journeys, so that we can better connect with where we're going, inside ourselves and in our outer lives, in our everyday lives. We are spiritual beings having human experiences, not human beings simply having spiritual experiences from time to time. And I believe we are currently in a global process of recovering or rediscovering our spiritual nature in a more personal, intimate, and authentic way than many listening to this call might have tried or attempted before. We are now going on a deeper journey to engage and connect with ourselves and our spiritual nature through our heart centers, through our intuition, through our higher senses and perceptions, which I often call sentience, and through our higher connections with the universe, infinite light, divine love, and life force that many call God, spirit, creator or creation, the all that is, and more. So regardless of what you choose to call it, it is an ever-present force of energy and universal intelligence that is guiding, supporting, and co-creating our lives with us, And that is the spiritual nature we are going to speak about in our conversations today. So welcome, Lacy. I'm excited, and it appears we have two of our cats are excited this evening. If anybody's hearing a subtle meowing, that's our cats trying to sound into the podcast, that they're adding their wisdom, I suppose, to the conversation.
Yeah. They're ever present, as are all
Yes.
5 animals in the house. And as we know, animals are pure positive energy. And so they're when we are energized and animated in our own lives, they tend to start acting out in their own ways because they're matching us. So
they want to participate for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, Marie, thank you for that introduction. You know, as I was listening to you sort of go through that, I'm reminded, and I love the review of what we've done over the last 8-9 months now, because it really has been a journey, I say journey from human to soul, which is the same kind of as saying a journey from the head to the heart. You know, our human being nature is, governed according to our conditioning by our brain. Right, our mind, and so we are raised to solve problems and be intellectual and compete against each other and to judge and all those things and all the things that we've talked about. But we're really moving to a place as we moved from our human self and our personality and our stories and all those components, as we've become more aware of those things over the last several months. We've moved more into the conversation about energy. And of course, now we're moving from the conversation of energy really to the conversation about spirit and soul and our higher self, also known as our intuition. All of these words are sort of synonymous, if you will.
Yeah, and in some ways, last month our topic of the interconnection between science and spirituality, if we saw the mind or our brain as science and spirituality as our heart, last month was sort of a bridge to this month's conversations.
Absolutely. And if anybody's really paying attention out there, this is, there is a progression here, because for some people, you wouldn't be able to hear the conversation we're going to have today for the first time, because your mind doesn't want to really let some of this stuff in, right? We have to first, I tend to be that kind of linear thinker where I like to break things down and then have things bridge to other things. So I'm really excited about this topic, because it is a journey that you and I have certainly been on, and it's why Whole Soul School and Foundation was created, because we discovered and found our way to our own spiritual nature, and it really changed our life.
Yes.
And that's really why we're sitting here today. So when we talk about our spiritual nature, our soul self, our higher self, I think of it as an unseen part of ourself that is connected to the energies of the universe, connected to the pure, positive, all-knowing, organizing force out there that some people call God, some people call Source, right? Some people call Allah, some people, all different names. But to me, it's all the same. It's that pure, positive, unseen, organizing force. And I'm a part of that force. That force exists in me, and I'm connected to that force. And especially when I can feel my connection to that force when I'm living more from my soul or my spirit than when I'm living from my mind and from my intellect. So I think today what we wanted to focus on was talking about how do we engage this spiritual nature. And there's so many people out there, so many wonderful authors and spiritual teachers who talk about this. And we're going to talk a little bit, or mention basically Sonia Choquette. And Sonia is, she's a world-renowned author, storyteller, vibrational healer. She's written obviously many books, and one that we love is called Trust Your Vibes. And I think it's worth talking about, when we talk about understanding our spiritual nature or feeling our spiritual nature, what we're really feeling is energetic vibration, right? We're feeling an energetic vibration within ourselves and in other people and in the world around us. And Sonia, one of my favorite quotes is, she says, we have bodies, we have personalities, we have histories, we have stories, and we have experiences. But you know what? We are not those things. We are spirit, right? Yes. So it is our spiritual nature that really animates us. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Exactly.
And part of that human experience are the 5 senses that help us negotiate our world, right?
Yeah, well, and they're the 5 physical senses that help us, that we've been conditioned to believing that that's all our world is. What we can see, what we can hear, taste, touch, and smell are in many ways all that we believe our human experience is about.
Right. Those are all the sort of methods or modes that we have been
taking the world
around us. Exactly.
Right. But Sonia Choquette and many of us that live in sort of these intuitive realms and engage some of these higher senses talk about a 6th sense. And Sonia Choquette calls that intuition, and she calls that our vibes. So in that book, Trust Your Vibes, she's got a lot of tools for how you can connect with your intuition. And it's a great read. I read it. It was one of the first books I picked up when we were on our spiritual journey. Yeah. Sonia Choquette was one of the first authors I actually found. She published a number of books through Hay House. And so, but she helped get me oriented to this world of spirit. And if you want to hear somebody talking about the world of spirit, Sonia Choquette is one of the best people you can tune into. She now has a YouTube channel, which makes it easier to access her work.
And she really breaks things down in a very simple way when she talks about helping us connect to our intuition.
Yes.
And when we talk about intuition being part of the 6th sense, right? Really what we're talking about is we've got the 5 senses that we can like, that are nearly tangible, right? Mm-hmm. That we're conditioned to believe this is how we are to experience our world. And then we have intuition, which is unseen, but it's a feeling, right?
Well, it's a feeling and it's a force. And it's a higher level of soul intelligence that lives beyond the limitations of the human brain and the human mind. And it comes through the wisdom of our hearts. And so, from my perspective, and I don't know if we were necessarily going to talk about this today, but going a little off grid, is that really our minds, we've been conditioned to believe our minds will solve everything, that they're going to solve all the problems of this planet. But if we can look at this planet, we're not presently solving the problems of the planet right now through the mental perspective and the mental tools that we have at our disposal at this point. It's kind of, again, like what Einstein said, we're not going to solve the problems we created from the level of thinking that created them. We have to go outside the box. And when we move into our 6th sense, that's exactly what we're doing. And to me, it was the heart center that was always designed to be giving the directives to the mental mind. The mind was supposed to be the servant of the heart. It was supposed to carry out the instructions of the wise, all-knowing heart center. And that's, when you think about having a vibe, Lacy, what do people say when they have an intuition? They say, I feel, where do you feel it? Where do many people feel intuition?
Gut.
My gut feeling, right? We say my gut vibe on that,
right.
My instinct. We might call it an instinct. But that's coming not from our head. That's coming from a deeper place inside all of us.
Well, and I would add that it's energy too. When vibe is short for vibration.
Right.
And vibration is energy in motion, right? Energy in motion.
Right.
So we've been talking about the field that surrounds all of us, which is a vibrating energy field. So when we pick up on other people's vibes, or we have a bad vibe, or someone walks in the room and you can feel the vibe, right?
You say you can cut the tension with a knife.
Right.
I mean, we have a lot of expressions that are, indicate to all of us, if you learn to listen for where that sixth sense is.
Right.
It's in our language, but it just doesn't get the credit it deserves, and it doesn't get the attention it requires for it to really lead our lives. And so a lot of people, from using Sonia's language, are five sensories. But there are those of us that go beyond our five senses, and that's what leads our life experiences into the realm of the extraordinary. That's where miracles become a regular experience, because we've left the limitations and the confines of our physical senses that can only exist in a physical world, and we're accessing energy far greater, much more vast, and much wiser than our human minds can ever tap into. And so when our heart centers are open, and we're going to talk more about that, but when our heart centers and our intuition and our vibes are activated and we're listening to them, and then we give those instructions to our minds that are meant to carry out those instructions, we begin living at a whole other level.
Yeah, and she says, there's another quote here that just kind of is in line with what you're saying, which is, in order to trust your vibes, you have to first be able to sense them. And to do this, you must quiet the mind. So, I think a lot of what I wanted to talk about today is about how, because I see how do I connect with my intuition? How do I connect with that energy field? How do I connect with my soul self, my higher self? Many people walk through life very disconnected from this part of themselves. We can call it our sixth sense abilities. It's all in the same realm, right?
Yes.
So how do we quiet the mind enough to actually be in the energy where we can sense the vibe within ourself, within our heart center, within other people as they, as we interact with our world? I think it is about quieting the mind and quieting the chatter and quieting ourselves from all the attention that we give to all the distraction in the world, and really get centered and balanced in our bodies and in our hearts. And what are some of the things we can do to do that? Because I think quieting the mind is a big initial step to engaging our spiritual nature. So, there are some I'd like you to actually talk about this, because I think it's a really, really powerful technique, and it sounds very, very simple, but something called conscious breathing is one of the first things that we can do to help center ourselves.
Well, and I'm going to go back a step before conscious breathing. I would say we have to give ourselves permission to begin to feel, because the feeling is the vibration. And when we start to activate our intuition and we start to listen and to become aware of the vibes around us and inside us, we move from all the thinking and the ego's chatter, right, that just is constant and pretty incessant in our world today. And we enter the realm of feeling that it's an incredibly vast realm where anything is possible, everything is accessible to us, and anything that we need in terms of resources or knowledge or connection or community on any level, we're going to access it through the feeling senses that come through our heart centers. So I'm always going to be bringing it back to the heart center, because that's where this higher connection flows, and that's where it grows. That's where our garden is. That's where we're planting these seeds of higher connection. Many people might decide in sort of their mental minds that they're going to become spiritual, and that's still a mental decision. But when people really develop a spiritual practice and they start truly engaging their spiritual nature versus just the ritual of more potentially religion, right, where it's kind of a ritual of attending a service, but maybe not everybody's actively participating from their feelings in that service. So when you're not activated in feelings, you're not tapped into energy. And when you're not tapped into energy, you're not feeling frequency. And when you're not tapping into frequency, you're not at the level of being able to sense at those higher level of intuition, vibration. And so, number one, I just would say engaging our spiritual nature starts with the willingness to begin to feel our world inside and outside of us.
And that's big. I just, as a psychologist and as somebody who's worked with a lot of people and a lot of men in particular, I just want to interject that, the concept of being willing to feel is threatening to a lot of people, because feeling is for some people has a negative connotation, because feelings have been so negative, or they think they have to be feeling means being vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I just want to interject that I think it's feeling is absolutely the cornerstone of all of this, because feelings are emotion, and emotion is energy in motion. So we have to get in touch with our feelings,
Well,
for
and
sure.
thoughts are energy, and energy is energy moves in our thinking too.
Yes.
But if I keep asking our listeners, and even you and I, to think about the world we're presently living in, if thinking was the way out, that we were going to change this planet, that we were going to find some kind of planetary peace, that we were all going to get along in some way, and everybody was going to have the resources that they needed. If that was the case, that thinking alone was going to get us there, we'd be there by now.
Sure.
You look at our technology, but our consciousness and our spirituality has not caught up with the level of technology we have. And if we keep going on this path where we just keep advancing in technology, which is very much a mental, creation, then we don't have that guidance system that comes from our heart's awareness and our connectedness and our, the thing that makes us more a feeling of oneness, where our compassion comes from, where our kindness comes from, where the feeling of wanting to help others comes from. All of those feelings come from the heart and come from a more, I don't think we were going to get into this, but there's the masculine side of us and there's the feminine side of us. So I would just say that our heart centers tap into that more fluid feeling state. And when you're in a state of flow, you're connected to your feelings, and you can connect to a whole other world of wisdom and intelligence and insight than our human minds and our brains have the capability to access. It's just not wired to connect at the level of frequency the way our hearts and our feelings are.
And I totally agree with everything that you're saying, but I also think that it's sometimes hard or difficult for people to understand that the heart is the center and how that works. And that's why I think it's so important to, as we talk about, how do we connect to that? Right. How do I even connect to my heart space that you're talking about?
Well, that's where we're going to get into some of these other concepts. So certainly, I'm not the first one to say that when we're trying to get into a state of feeling, if you're somebody who lives deep, way up in your head for most of your day, every day, you do need to access some tools like we're talking about, like what I'm talking about.
Right.
And this might be a world, some people might be listening to this and knowing exactly what I'm saying. And some people might be talking from your perspective is, what's the how? How do I get there? How do I connect with that? And so breathing is one of the simplest, easiest ways to connect with your spirit. And many people were breathing all day, every day. Those of us that are still in the land of the living are breathing. But breathing, you can have the breathing that kind of is more of an existence, or you can have breathing that's a spiritual practice, right? And breathing, if you start to tune into the consciousness that we're talking about and start to engage your spirit more and more, you'll notice the difference of when you're just breathing these shallow breaths inside yourself that's just spinning you from one activity to the next. Everybody's running through their schedule in the world today. We all have a million places to be and not enough time to get there. And that what keeps us at the level of, I guess I would call, human breathing. That's just your regular, human
life-sustaining,
human conditioned breathing. That did anybody listening to this call were we taught to breathe in kindergarten? Right? We were taught to read.
Right.
We were taught to sit down as a group. We were taught to stand in lines and receive lessons. But I don't remember having classes and learning how to breathe properly that would center me in my spirit. I don't remember having that kindergarten class. So this is something that many of us as adults have to go back to remember. So number one, just to become conscious that perhaps how you're breathing, it is keeping you alive and keeping you upright and keeping you, running through your day. But I wouldn't call that a spiritual practice until you slow your breathing down. You consciously say to yourself or acknowledge to yourself, this could be on the inside, where you're going to take 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. And you're just going to let yourself take a deep divine breath in. And you're going to breathe that breath all the way down deep into your heart center. And if you imagine that breath going to every single cell in your body. And if you wanted to take that conscious breathing exercise even further, you could imagine that breath as being a particular color of light. It can be a favorite color that you've always been attracted to. It can just be a color that you feel attracted to on a given day. You just can feel that your body needs that color of light. But if you imagine that breath going through your body, touching and activating all of the cells in your body to be as alive and vibrant and present as they can possibly be. And while you breathe in that healing, soothing, gentle, and calming, flowing light, you know that you're in a state of receiving some kind of spiritual sustenance from the life force in the cosmos that you most easily connect with. You can call that God, you can call that the universe, you can call that creation, you can call that the all that is. But you literally just let yourself take that conscious breath in and know that you're being reset in some way in that moment with that perfect breath that's giving you life force and everything that your body needs to function in a higher level, to connect with every living being on the planet, that recognizes that you're connected to the energy of the planet and that you're connected with all things and everything that exists here on this planet. That's a little bit of a different breath than many people take in their day when they're having their oatmeal or they're fixing their coffee in the morning. Many people aren't even thinking about the quality of their breathing when they start their day. And many people are breathing only these very shallow breaths. And I think it takes a toll on our health over time. And it's only when some crisis or calling or, somebody crosses our path that draws attention to how we're breathing. Many of us don't even think about how we're breathing until we're invited to that conversation. So if we can do one thing on this call today, I'm definitely inviting and being a voice of calling people to pay attention to how they're breathing, because how they're breathing is also how they're holding energy in their body. And if they're breathing in this fluid, flowful, loving almost, right? This loving, very present, very conscious way, you just set the tone of your day to be more meaningful, to be more conscious, to be more in the flow, and to invite a higher awareness and intuition that helps you connect with your spirit. And your spirit is wanting to connect with you, but you have to start feeding it the soul nourishment that it needs. And one of the first things that your spirit needs is it needs better breathing. Does that make sense?
Yes, Marie, that makes perfect sense. And for me, I was somebody, I think, who for a long time in my life was a shallow breather before I kind of entered this realm. And for me, in my experience, I use breathing now to really calm myself down. So I use it to connect to my spiritual nature, but I also find that even before that, the deep breathing helps me get really calm, and I can feel my physiology just slow down. And usually it's in those moments that I can find balance, a little bit more balance, because a lot of times I need the breathing to sort of reset myself as a result of a challenging situation or a stressful situation.
Or just being overwhelmed. I mean, it happens to all of us throughout our day, whether it's in traffic or at work or with our kids. For any parents that are listening, it's a good soul skill or tool to have.
Yes.
To be able to go into your breath. When you need just that 2-second pause, when you just need that couple of breaths, and to be conscious about it, to be saying to yourself on the inside, I am inviting this breath in to center myself. If you don't want words, don't use the words. But if it helps you to have the words while you're taking it in, everybody's different.
Yeah, I really liked what you said about breathing in color. I had not thought as much about breathing in color, but what I do know that I do is when I take a deep breath, I imagine myself breathing in pure positive energy or light. Mm-hmm. And as I breathe out, I'm breathing out the tension and the stress and the toxicity that I feel has got me so tense.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of my way of doing it. I'm sure people, have all different kinds of ways of doing it and all different visualizations.
And from a non-spiritual perspective, if we were talking about breathing still as a tool, it's very helpful in self-regulation, right?
Yes,
it can really help us regulate
exactly.
ourselves and regulate our energy, even if we're not using it as a very spiritual tool. But if you take it to the next level and you allow this awareness of bringing your spirit into that breath, mm-hmm. into that deep breathing exercise you're going into, mm-hmm. it becomes an even richer experience. And your reset and your sense of balance is expanded just because of your conscious awareness to invite and allow that in. Mm-hmm. And so breathing is a conversation. You're connecting with the universe, you're connecting with everybody else around you, you're connecting to the spirit within you. You're having a conversation in your breath with the realm of spirit. And so when people are stressed out or they feel alone or they're tense or somebody just cut them off in traffic or they just got, a bad review at work or whatever, they felt shame. People could be at school. There's plenty of kids, I'm sure. If you have a child that's being shamed at school, just breathing differently can help you move through that experience because you're not alone. If you understand that breathing is a spiritual practice, that when you're breathing, that infinite life force in the cosmos and in the universe that we live in is with you. And you can feel supported by that breath. And so at whatever level people choose to take this information in, you can use it simply as a method from a human five sensory experience of calling in that breath to bring just a little bit of calm and some self-regulation in. That is definitely a step one, because some people don't pause at that point. They just keep going with the anger, or they just keep going with the tension. They don't even put in a pause to breathe. So if you know enough to pause to invite that sense of calm and reset in your life, that's huge. But the next step, if you wanted to take it into more of a spiritual practice, I'm not talking about religion. I'm just talking about connecting with spirit, is to know that you're having a conversation and a connection with spirit as you breathe in and you breathe out. And you know you're connecting with the life force of the energy that expands and contracts in this world. So,
Marie, would you say that practices like meditation and yoga and mindfulness are all part of the same thing that you just kind of talked about? I mean, in a sense, I would imagine with all those practices, you have to really be connected to your breath and focused on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people you can see an increase in people seeking out those experiences, mm-hmm. right? I don't think 40 or 50 years ago you had a yoga studio on every corner, and you can see that it's much more widely available, mm-hmm. meaning there's a lot more people seeking it. Mm-hmm. But even if you didn't go to yoga or engage in some kind of meditative practice, a lot of people, I think, get this when they run. I think a lot of people even if they unconsciously breathe, they're resetting their rhythms and connecting with a more organic essence of themselves when they're running. And so I think that's why a lot of people, they may not know it, but are attracted to that experience because they're actually resetting their bodies and attuning their bodies to the breath. And when you're exercising, you have to be more conscious of your breathing.
Oh, totally.
Right?
That is so true.
For your physical stamina,
Right.
which only benefits your emotional stamina.
Right.
So you can go on a hike. You can go for a walk in nature. You can go for a walk around your neighborhood. Any of these things is going to engage your breath. It doesn't have to be an intense physical exercise or physical fitness or go to the gym. But whether you meditate, whether you do yoga, you could do it when you journal. It's some kind of still point in your day where you slow all of you down and you just allow yourself. And I think we talked about this before, maybe with the visioning and manifesting. This doesn't have to be a 24-hour-day meditation. This can just be 5 or 10 minutes. But the boost you get when you do it, when you connect with your spirit in that way, whether you journal, whether you just put on some either classical music or some soothing music that's more for your soul than it is for your mental mind and your own entertainment. When you feed your spirit, you're feeding it differently. You're asking yourself, what does my spirit need today? And I'm combining some of these other skills when I'm talking about that, but that's a good question to ask. What does my spirit need today? And everybody knows what it's like sometimes to wake up stressed. We went to bed the night before, we have a big presentation to do, we have a podcast that's coming up, we have a bill to pay, taxes are due. Anybody that goes to bed, number one, you can breathe just like this just before bed and reset yourself for a better night's sleep. It is a tool that has been long forgotten in our human culture, but it's as basic as breathing to feed our spirits in a different way. And if we just learn to breathe better, we might actually be healthier as a species, and we might actually make better decisions that take care of the planet in a better way. I'm going to go out on a limb here that I think better breathing can change the world. I mean, it truly is a spiritual practice to become more aware of how you're breathing, how you're connecting with your spirit. What does your spirit need in any given moment? And then if you're not aware that your spirit needs something, but you just take 3 minutes when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, and you spend an extra minute or two, and you just take a couple of calm breaths, and those breaths go all the way down deep into your belly, right? And whether you let yourself breathe light into that breath, or you just enjoy the sacred flow of feeling that breath go all the way deep inside you, that's filling you to overflowing with the goodness and the light and the kindness and the positive experiences that you want to feel that day. 1 or 2 minutes a day can give you a whole entirely different life. And I've experienced that when I've had to dig my way out of trauma. It started with my breath. And it just started with becoming aware of how important it was that I partnered with it as a friend. I partnered with it as my spirit, and I partnered with it as an ally to support my life experiences here. And the quickest way that I can have a bad day is to disconnect from my breath and to disconnect with myself as connected to more than Marie Mohler, right? When I disconnect from all of those things, then I'm sure I'm breathing in a more shallow way, and I'm having a more shallow experience in my day, and I'm having more shallow interactions with other people. And this is what engaging our spiritual nature is. It's not just becoming a monk. It's not just going to the church and going to a church service. It's not just a ritual that we sign up for or something. It is a decision that we want to connect with something deeper inside us. And the breath is the first tool that takes us there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm embarrassed, but I think I would just like to say that I'm connecting in it tonight for the first time, I think, ever, with this notion that the alignment of my breath as my spirit and my human self is my human self. And when my human self can sync up with my breath, it's like my human self syncing up with my spirit or my soul in a different way. I kept seeing when you were talking the image of like Peter Pan and his shadow. You know, when you can so see when Peter Pan
We've gotten separated.
Have gotten separated, right? And that when Peter Pan finds his shadow and it's sewn back on, they are one.
Yes.
Right?
And we have to become one with our breathing.
Breath. Yes, I just
and when
felt
we're
that.
breathing the oxygen from the all-powerful, pure positive energy of the universe, right? That is also source and spirit and our higher wisdom, we once again connect with everyone and everything. We're connecting with a life force that animates everyone and everything.
Right.
And all the intelligence of the entire infinite cosmos is in that breath.
Yeah.
And so I know this may not be someone's language, and I know I may be talking to more than just the beginner breather, but it's something to become aware of, because I'm sure in my early days finding Sonia Choquette, I'm positive that she was talking about breathing. And I didn't know about breathing in this way when I connected with her, but I've learned over time to live it and to take it in as just something that's a part of my day. That's a part of what I do. And if we talk about nothing else today on this call, if that's the only thing that you take away from this call, is just, even if you don't even understand what I'm saying, or you listen to some of Lacy's experiences with breathing, if you just became more aware that your breath is important, and when you want to connect with your spirit and you want to quiet your mind, you're going to need to partner with your breath, because your breath takes you into your heart. And it feeds your mind, and it feeds all the cells in your body, right? But it's part of what activates your heart center and the higher wisdom that's inside you, that's in your spirit. And this is a different level of nourishment. So some people are becoming increasingly more conscious of eating organic foods, or paying attention to what's in their water, or reading the ingredient list on the food products that you buy. There's been a huge wave of consciousness about that. This is another wave of consciousness that needs to start to spread in our humanity, is beginning to partner again with our spirit, and beginning to partner again with our breath that helps connect us to our spirit. So that was a lot of information about the breath, but that is soul skill number 1. That's the tool that's going to help all these other things get easier. And whether you hike, meditate, journal, do yoga, just sit outside on your lawn, or lay a towel down, or don't even lay a towel down, and just connect with the earth and breathe a couple of deep breaths. You could take a walk on your lunch break and just walk around the block and take some deep breaths in. You're going to be a different person in the afternoon than you were in the morning. So it's really profound, and it can be as simple as a breath, right?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm not sure about our listeners, but I can tell you this has been truly helpful to me, because I took my sort of understanding and experience of breathing to a new level for myself, just in my mind and in my heart. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I know another way that we can tap into our spiritual nature is through our talents, and you talk a lot about that, I know, through the creative energy that comes through our talents.
Yeah. Another way that for me especially, but I know for a lot of people in the world, that one of the quickest, easiest ways to connect with our spirit is through our talents, is through those aspects of us that we love and often take for granted. A lot of us don't even recognize our talents, because it's often the thing we do for free, or we give away for free, because we don't recognize it as being as special as it really is.
Right.
Our talents, the ones we uniquely possess, are often a lifeline to spirit. It's where our bliss is. It's where we feel connected. It's where we step outside of time. It's where we connect with the realms of spirit, and we leave the stress and, all the tension of our days. And so, again, some people might do that, might get into that space or that zone. We could call it the zone, right? When they're baking, or when they're tinkering out in the garage, right? Or when they're gardening or when they're mowing the lawn. You get a lot of, you definitely feel, I don't know if it's a talent, but we can call it a talent, right? That you like working out in the yard and you like tending to the earth in that way. And that's a talent of yours.
And often when I'm engaged in that, I find I feel very, very connected to the universal energies a lot more. I get all kinds of ideas.
Right.
I get all kinds of what I call downloads.
Right.
That's really a creative space for me out there.
Yeah, and the same thing for you, I would say, with your teaching. Mm-hmm. So when you teach, you get into that space inside yourself, that wisdom from, you might not even say it's always completely this lifetime. So you can
lots
access
of times.
this other information. Do you think that comes from your physical brain?
Right.
It generally doesn't, because our physical brain is limited to what it's learned this lifetime.
Right. Exactly.
It is limited to what it's been taught. But our talents access, again, our heart centers. And our heart centers are connected to the field. And if we can connect through our talents into our heart centers, and we connect to that larger energy field that's connected to everyone and everything through our feelings, through our vibrations, we are tapping into something more. And we can tap into that pure positive energy in that time that we would call God or Creator. Or, there are people who paint and somehow it just comes through them. And there's this gorgeous, illustration, this amazing painting that they say, I didn't even really plan that, right? That's when you're connected to your spirit. So it's that part of us that somehow some force, some life force, some creative inspiration just flows through us and we create something extraordinary. And in some way, I find that that's another easy way for people to connect. And if you don't have something like that, if you can't think of something like that in your life, the first thing I'd say is think of something that many of your friends or the people around you are always seeking you out to do, because they know it's your talent, because they're always asking you to help them with something, right? Or to do something for them. Maybe you're really good with electronics or computers. And so we all have those special talents. And when we connect to that, number one, we're kind of tuning into that universal force that we can call spirit or our higher selves. And often we're connected into something like service. We often use our talents to help others. It's the way that we connect with other people and connect with other people's spirit and their spiritual presence. Even if that's not people's language, we are an interconnected species. We're not conditioned to believe that, but we really are. And so through our talents, we can connect with everyone and everything, especially when we're breathing. And we're aware of that, right? And we're tuned into that there is a universal positive energy all around us and within us. And when we're accessing our talents, it's kind of what Joseph Campbell once talked about, which is following our bliss. And when we're blissing out, that means you're fully connected with your spirit. And you're connected to source. And you're connected to the creation.
Well, and I wonder too because I was just sitting here thinking that there are probably people that have talents or skills, but they don't necessarily love doing them. Like they might be something they're really good at, but it may be something that doesn't, make them happy or whatever. So would you also say
there's a quality to it? I'm talking about your spiritual talents, your innate talents that really are, and I wouldn't just call them talents. They're what you would really connect with as being your gifts.
Okay,
right?
So and that you love. I think that's the thing I'm trying to get to, the feeling that you associate with it, because it's really important that you love doing whatever that is, because it's the feeling of it that's sort of expanding the energy.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And so when you're spending time with your gifts, you're spending time with an energy that gives to you and also gives to others in some way.
Right.
Somehow there's a beautiful exchange of energy. And when you're exchanging that energy with those gifts, and you can call them talents, but some people have talents, like you said, that they, that they don't necessarily particularly enjoy, which could be part of there could be other things associated with
I could be a good
enjoy.
cook, but not enjoy being in the kitchen.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So in this way, when we're talking about engaging your spiritual nature, you want to be listening for that thing that makes you feel really good when you're doing it, that you love doing it, that it's easy to do, and you don't feel like you lose time when you're doing it. In fact, you kind of step outside of time, and time almost feels like it goes faster because you love it so much. Time went by in a blink.
Right.
When you're not in your spirit and you're not in your gifts or your talents in this way, time goes slower.
Right.
And so how many people, I'm just going to say, feel like they're watching the clock when they're at work?
Right.
That's telling you that you're not in your spirit.
Right.
Your spirit's not happy going to work with you in that environment unless something were to change and honor more of who you really are.
Right.
And so your gifts are another indicator and another gauge of what you're really meant to be doing. And we are meant to be living our gifts and our talents more of the day, every day. And our world has gotten farther away from that. So look at this. We've gotten farther away from our breath. We've gotten farther away from our spirit. We've gotten farther away from what brings us joy in the special gifts that we uniquely have. And we have people who are angry. We have people who are, needing medication to help them with depression. The rates of these things, depression and anger and addiction, have only skyrocketed more and more throughout our human collective and in the human population, the further we've gotten away from our spirit. This isn't about religion. This is about connecting with a positive energy and positive force in the world and in the cosmos, that if you're not experiencing some of the things we're talking about, that I'm talking about, you're missing something. This is a call and a cue to you that you are missing something. And if you were called to listen to this podcast, right, then there's something in this conversation for you, either to affirm that you're on a spiritual path and to keep going, or that it's time to maybe take the next step, whatever that is, in deepening your connection with yourself and with spirit and with a supportive universe that wants to help you live your best life and achieve your highest dreams for this life and what would feel so meaningful and joyful for you to be living in this life. And so these are just some very beginning. We're just like the tip of the iceberg here,
absolutely,
with the breath and through your gifts and talents to connect with your spiritual nature.
What is your take on, or how would you talk about the role of prayer with respect to connecting to your spiritual nature? Because, I'll let you talk about that, but when I think of prayer, I certainly automatically think of religion in a way, and I know I've moved beyond that now, but I'm just curious as to how you would sort of connect prayer and your spiritual nature.
It's a really good question, and of course I guess it would be on the hearts and minds of people listening to the podcast. When I grew up, because I grew up in the church, going to church every Sunday. I was involved in probably every church activity you could be in. I was in every choir. I was in every activity you could be in, because that's just what my family did. I did interpret prayer from a very, I suppose, Christian perspective, right? And it was more of a ritual than it was a deep spiritual experience. And it wasn't until I had my awakening that I realized that my breath was a prayer. Right? My gifts are a prayer. Right? Going outside and working in the yard is a prayer. And then you can get into intentions and you can say a prayer or an affirmation that's also summoning support from the universe for something you specifically want help with or to manifest. Prayer is many things to many people. And so for a lot of people, they might really connect with the prayers in their church or their synagogue or, their particular faith. And as long as it's animating a part of you in your heart and in your spirit, and it's making you feel, and it's making you connect with something bigger than just your little human self, then that form of prayer may be working for you. But for people who are not having that experience, or who maybe never had that experience, just about anything in your life could be considered a prayer. And so anytime you're consciously making the intention to connect with a life force and a pure positive energy of source, the creator, the all that is, spirit, your guides, nature, connecting with something that connects you to the universal life force, that's a prayer to me. That may differ from other people's belief systems, but I think we're here on this planet to connect with all that we are. And if we're everyone and everything, if we're connected into a higher state of oneness in the universal field of energy, then anything that takes us into that space, right? If washing dishes gets you there, right?
Right.
You know, if going for a run gets you there,
Right.
if meditating gets you there. Some people might wash their car and it gets them there. If you have something where you can get quiet long enough to go inside yourself and just feel your breathing and feel your soul presence inside your body and feel yourself connecting. That's why I think a lot of people like to go for walks in nature, because nature's breathing, right? Nature's breathing on that walk with you. The trees are breathing. If you get quiet enough to listen, you can just feel that nature is very much alive. Even if you don't see a squirrel, even if you don't even see a bird, you probably will if you went out for a walk. But it's full of life force. And anywhere you can be that's full of life force, and you can consciously tap into that life force inside you, and you're
You feel
breathing
alive.
in that
Right.
life force, and you're enjoying the experience of that life force. To me, you're in a prayer, and you're connecting with spirit. And then if you add words to it, or you ask for help in it, or you state an intention about it, you're just amplifying the prayer. You're adding more consciousness to that prayer. So I think sometimes we're in a receiving prayer where we're asking for help and we're breathing and we're taking something in. And sometimes we're, we're engaging or we're summoning support. And that's an active prayer where we're seeking help from something outside of ourselves to transcend an experience or move through a challenge or even manifest something we want. So I think there's so many layers and levels of prayer. But in the most simplest form, a lot of people might have even grown up in the church and left church because for whatever reason it didn't resonate at a certain age, right? I would invite you, just if the word prayer is a trigger word for you,
Yeah, I was thinking
change the word, right? Call it a conversation. Make it be something that you can connect with, right? In whatever way that is. And so I think that's why also meditation has become more appealing, and yoga, because in some ways it's taken the religion out of it and it's just brought back the connection.
Co-creating might be another way to think about it. Co-creating with the universe.
Co-creating with the universe. Yes. Yeah. So that's a very, it's a good question.
Yeah, and I also think about the role of intention, just to kind of round this out in the just in what we're talking about, in the similar energy of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
The role of intention is intention a prayer?
I would think so.
I mean, the way you
because
describe
intention,
it.
when you're intending something, you're summoning another force from inside you and outside of you in the ethers to support you in what you're dreaming, right? And what you desire and the help you seek, right? So I think intention is a prayer. I think anytime we're communicating at some higher energetic level, everybody does it. And we don't, if you have a particular faith that you follow, you know very well what you would call prayer. But people who would consider themselves to be people who don't pray, we all, even if we have a flat tire and we say, oh, geez, now here, this isn't my day, right? Can just a little help here, like imagine
Right.
what people feel. You see people do it in movies, like, we summon help.
Right.
It's an instinct inside us. It's part of our intuition to call for help. And we know in some way help is available. And when we call for help in a prayer, that's prayer. So there's so many ways that we can do it. And there's so many ways we can engage our spiritual nature, and intention and breathing and our gifts and talents are definitely among them. And I think, one of the last things maybe was also gratitude. and appreciation.
Yes.
Because that's how we pay in to the energy in the field and into our own energy fields and into our heart centers, to essentially express a feeling that we'd like more of what we just had the appreciation for. We'd like to expand that experience. We want that to amplify in our experience. And so it's really easy to give appreciation for things that we love and that feel good. And, and even better sometimes appreciation when you really grow on the spiritual path is that you can find a sense of gratitude for a gift inside something that isn't pleasant, but it's still a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
But it's still a spiritual experience. So
absolutely.
Everything that comes into our experience is an opportunity for our soul and our spirit to grow and for us to partner more with spirit, because the bigger the challenge, the more you need spirit in your life, right?
Yeah.
And so appreciation and gratitude, that may be a tall order for some people who have a challenge to feel any kind of gratitude in the situation. I would say anybody that is listening that could find a sense of gratitude for what that thing is that's challenging you might just find that some answers come a little quicker, because the universe sees that you're recognizing that you're getting help and support and that you like it. And so in that magnetism way that we talked about, visioning and manifesting and having an electromagnetic field around us, when we're in appreciation and gratitude and we're connecting with our spirit and we're amplifying that energy, the universe wants nothing more than to provide you more of what you just appreciated, what you just felt as a feeling and a vibration. So it's really powerful.
Well, I'm certainly having huge appreciation right now that I get to actually partner with you, not just in life, but in these discussions, and I get to be in the energy of the wisdom that comes from partnering with spirit, which you have done so much and beautifully, and in all different kinds of ways. So
well, and in my world, I would say connecting with spirit is one of my gifts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's been very easy for me to make that connection.
Yeah.
But not something that came necessarily naturally in the beginning, even though it was a gift. So there could be a lot of people listening who might say, well, I don't see myself in her because it seems so easy for her. It is now. But I still had to activate that awareness and then call it in. But all of us have the ability to connect at some level.
Yeah.
And the more you make time to connect with that on a regular basis, just like if you were meeting a friend for the first time, and how quickly would you develop that friendship if you saw each other once every 6 months? It would be harder to grow that friendship.
Right, absolutely.
It's the same thing with connecting with your spirit. If you think you're going to do it, once a month, it will grow, but it's just going to take longer, and it won't go as deep, and it won't be as rich because you're just not spending the time with it.
Right.
But if you make it a daily practice where you find some way every day when you pour your orange juice, you're going to, have a moment of gratitude, and you're going to take a couple deep breaths, right? And you're really going to consciously invite that in. Now it's a daily practice versus an intermittent practice or a never practice, right? Something like that. So it's calling into our conscious awareness that we can have. We can call this into our life as a spiritual practice as soon as we become conscious of the value of it in our life. And I think that's what we want to do on this call.
Yeah.
In this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know we might have gone long, but I still want to try and squeeze this in.
Okay.
So Sonia Choquette, in her book Trust Your Vibes, for the last part of our conversation today, at least for our first fireside chat for the month, is she has a quiz, and it's a 25-question quiz. And the question she asks is, are you a sixth sensory being? Basically, are you living beyond your five senses? And here's a quiz that might help indicate kind of where you are on that spectrum of experience. Do you want me to ask you?
No. I'll ask you a few of these, not all 25. I don't think we'll go through that. I think that'll take a while, but let's start and see where we get with that.
Well, in the quiz, I think you're asked to think of 3 levels to each question. What are those levels?
Rarely, sometimes, or often.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I'm going to read the first 8 questions, and you have to answer rarely, sometimes, or often.
Okay.
So number 1, when I'm with someone, I easily understand how they feel.
As an empath, I have to say, I can't think of a time where I don't know what they're feeling.
Yeah, I was going to say
Always
they
tuned
should have
in.
a different category, like
Yeah.
every minute of the day, and that would be you.
Right.
Okay, number 2, I love to physically move and exercise.
That is possibly a trick question. I move spiritually, but less physically, so I don't crave movement. I wouldn't say rarely. What is it? Is there a sometimes?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
I can say for me, I often.
Yeah.
I would answer that.
That's a big
I love
part
to
of your
physically
spiritual
move.
practice
Yeah.
is movement.
It is.
Yeah.
In lots of different ways. Okay, number 3, I listen to my gut feelings even if they don't make sense.
I can say not just often, always.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say, if you had asked me that question 15 years ago, it would have been more sometimes, and my goal would have been more often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, it's always.
Well, it absolutely guides you.
Yeah.
You won't listen to anything else, which I think is amazing.
Well, I've learned
Yeah.
in the journey that when I haven't listened,
Yeah.
I wouldn't
exactly.
say it's a mistake, but it's been a huge lesson. It's never gone well when I don't listen. So I've learned. Listen. Right?
All right, number 4, I'm aware of when someone is lying to me or manipulating me.
Often.
Okay. I don't know if we need to expound on that at all. I think we'll leave that there. So number 5, I can tell if I'm... Yeah.
It's a trusting vibes, you know.
Yeah.
I think many of us have been conditioned as children, really, to override our vibes, because it's sometimes hard to survive in regular public schools, I'd at least say, even if you're in a private school, in a classroom setting, when you're away from your parents and you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, early. It happens early, where you have feelings, but you don't feel safe to have those feelings. And so at first, you know, when our parents aren't there and the people we would look to and trust, they might reinforce also to override our vibes. But we very quickly learn in our early childhood years to not trust our vibes. It's part of our conditioning. And as we start to devalue our vibes, our shields go up. So we let our vibes go, which is our source of protection and is our navigational system. And we put on this metaphorical metal armor, and we start developing an arsenal to protect ourselves. And we get further and further away from our spirit. So our spirit and our vibes go together when we're trusting those. And when we learn to set those aside, we turn to our egos and our defenses that we develop over time to protect us. And many of us are on the pathway to transformation and coming back to our spirit, are trying to let go of our armor, release that step by step, and begin to listen to our inner voice. We didn't talk about that too much today, but listening to our inner voice, listening to our intuition, listening to that gut instinct. You know, a lot of parents have it. They might have had that instinct like, oh, I shouldn't have let them go out that night, or, you know, I should have held to that curfew, or, you know, whatever it might be. Parents have instincts, or they knew that their kids were sick and it took a couple days for it to show up. Their kids just weren't quite right. Parents feel the parent vibe. You know, there's many circumstances in all of our lives where we knew things, and sometimes we listen and sometimes we don't. And that's something for people to think about listening to this call. When you don't listen to your vibes, how does that go for you? How well does that work out for you? I would guess Sonia would say, and I would say, our vibes are always right. I've never had a circumstance where my vibe wasn't spot on.
Well, and what you're also talking about too, just to give the listeners a visual, is a tuning fork. You know, it's really what are you allowing are you allowing yourself to read those, you know, to follow the energy of the tuning fork that's inside of you, instead of following what's outside of you.
That's right.
Okay, so number 5, I can tell if I'm on the wrong track and I can change it.
Often.
Yep. Number 6, I know when someone is misleading me.
Generally. I mean, it's been quite a journey. I think now, because I'm an intuitive and I do this for a living, my skills are even sharper and clearer. But, even still, there are some times where a vibration or an energy that somebody's putting off, we're pretty good at our disguises. So there are a lot of people invested in making sure people see in them what they want you to see. And I think that can be very challenging for people. So even if people hearing that question for themselves, do you want to read it again?
I know when someone is misleading me.
Is to start to be paying attention and to activate that energy of discernment, right? Discernment is often, where you're sensing. Discernment is a sense.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a sensing of whether something is true or whether something feels off or just not what it's presenting to be in some way. And I think the more you call that into your awareness, the better your radar is going to become.
Yeah.
The better your ability to sense that more and more.
Okay, number 7, I tend to get overly involved with other people's problems.
Yeah, I would say early on, as an early empath, I think that was part of my life's experience. I think I cared about people deeply, and so anyway, you can get empaths and people who are intuitive, can get swept up in the energy of other people because it's kind of an ocean of emotion out there. And, we can even think it's our emotion, but oftentimes it's other people's emotions. And because we sometimes as intuitives and empaths, the more sensitive you get, the more tuned into your heart center you get, the more you feel other people as another you, as part of the oneness. And we feel called to help and heal and listen to people and support them. And then we also have to learn somewhere in there, as a sixth sensory that Sonia describes, as also to have boundaries. Because when you don't put your oxygen mask on first, when you don't engage in self-care for yourself first, there are a lot of tired empaths out there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of tired intuitives out there. So this is a quiz that's helping you to highlight and spotlight if you have some of this higher sensitivity and perceptivity.
Yes.
But it also comes with a learning curve that once you learn this about yourself and you start to develop the language about it, you do learn that it's good to have healthy boundaries. Or else you might not ever get any sleep or get any rest, right? Or it can take a toll on your physical well-being.
Right.
And you're not really helpful to this planet, and your gifts can't really do what they're supposed to do if you don't have the energy to engage them. So. Okay, last one.
And last one, number 8, I get immediate answers even when I don't fully understand the problem.
That's often. But again, that's a spiritual practice that I've had for a long time. And, I think about in that question, people we've talked about in our podcast, the greats, right? Leonardo da Vinci was pulling in all kinds of inventions and innovations and ideas even before he knew problems that he was even solving. He got probably images of things that were years ahead of his time. And we still use those inventions today. Right? Same thing for Albert Einstein. I think he went outside the box that many of the physicists of his day were trying to solve those issues. And I think Albert Einstein found the answers outside the box, but in many ways knew things beyond what his conscious knowing was. And I think that these are the perks of being a sixth sensory. Going into that intuitive sense, engaging that intuition, listening to our higher self, listening to that inner voice. And so, this was a big call today, and it was a calmer call in some ways because I think the spirit is quieter. In all the other podcasts, it's lively discussion when you're dealing with aspects of the ego that take you in all kinds of tunnels and, all kinds of drama and trauma, and it's louder. But as you start moving into the spirit realm and our spiritual nature, it's calmer, smoother, more serene, easier, flowful, less struggling is involved. And you over time become able to just be it more and more. And it's Anyway, it's easier. Life becomes easier when we access these other senses. And life is more of a struggle when we think we have to do it all on our own with just our 5 senses.
Right.
So how does that person predict the stock market and make millions, 10 years ahead of his time, right? Like the people who see things, the changes coming in, the industrial age, like people who felt
Technology.
and saw those changes are people who were ahead of the curve. They were sensing something before it ever came, right? We celebrate the successes of those people. And yet there are many people out there who aren't experiencing that kind of success. And sometimes it's because they just haven't turned on and tapped into their spiritual nature. And this is just the beginning of that conversation. It starts with some of these tools that we've talked about today.
Yeah.
And they're meant for everybody. We all have them. It's just a matter of how much you exercise them.
Right.
So I'm not a big runner, and I'm not a big workout person, as you could see by that question. I used to be. I was a big athlete in college and high school, but I'm not that now. So if I went to go outside right now today and run a mile, I think I'd be gasping for breath because I just haven't done it in a long time. But it's the same thing with your spiritual muscles. If they've atrophied over the years and you haven't exercised them, it's going to take a little bit of time to grow some spiritual stamina. And, it starts with some of these tools that we've mentioned today. So this is just an introduction to that topic and that concept. And so I really want to thank you, Lacy, for this conversation today.
You so much.
I think it's, I want to thank our listeners for joining us in this important conversation about these simple but accessible ways that we can begin to engage our heart's wisdom and our inner guidance systems and our spiritual nature. It takes time to nurture the sacred garden inside us, to ultimately grow and manifest the joy and abundance and peace and positive energy that so many seek in their daily lives. These are just some of the beginning steps and ideas presented today, as we've said. And we're going to be talking about these concepts and more in the conversations to come this month and throughout the remainder of 2019. So we'll be referencing this call in later podcasts. It's definitely part of the foundation for the next steps we're taking. So we're entering a bigger picture phase of our conversations now here at Whole Soul School and Foundation for this year anyway. And that aims to spotlight some of the key aspects of this process of personal transformation that we all at some level are engaging in our journeys here. So I think it's super exciting that, we've covered a lot of ground in the last 8 months.
Yep.
And so we're taking that turn now to have liftoff, I would say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So we invite all of you to join us in our second Fireside Chats podcast this month. It's going to be focusing on the topic of course, engaging our spiritual nature through the film Awake, The Life of Yogananda. And I haven't yet seen that film, but you've used it a little bit in your work in the prison system. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And we'll be talking about that on the 20th of this month. Additionally, we're going to have Jeff Jones join Lacy for another Transformation Talks episode on the 15th of this month. And we also are having Sue Wells from New Zealand join me in another fabulous Mind, Body, Spirit podcast and conversation this month. She actually offers a powerful meditation to help our listeners ground, center, and connect with the light that they truly are as we all continue to surf these changes and these shifts in our world today. So I don't think anybody's immune to the change, the level of change we're seeing in our world. So Sue offered that to all of us and all of our listeners.
Wonderful.
As a support system and a tool that they can go to as they ride the waves of change. So we invite you all who are listening to please like, subscribe, and share this podcast on social media sites and help us spread the word about Whole Soul School and Foundation. We definitely are growing, and we're growing our audience, and we want to make these messages available to people who need them. We invite you to come to our website, www.wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. Lacy tends to say .com, so anybody that's picked up on that, our website is .org and not .com. And if you sign up on our website, you get to receive our newsletter and any important notifications that we send out. We invite you definitely to visit us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram to check out our reminders for the soul posts that are these perfect those quick medicinal doses of just higher inspiration and energy that can just, again, help to reset your day on a positive note. And so we usually have quotes from the movies, quotes from, I think, Sonia Choquette we have in some of the quotes this month. And Flower Diamond is amazing with her beautiful poetry that inspires and touches the soul. So visit us on those social media outlets. And please consider making a donation to Whole Soul School and Foundation. It supports our work to, create these podcasts. We have visions of having more podcasts in the future and some different voices here at Whole Soul School and Foundation, but it requires support from listeners like you to keep the lights on and keep the podcast flowing. And we absolutely appreciate our existing donors. Any of you who've given before, we're so grateful, and especially our sustainer donors who really help us keep the energy flowing here. So we're very, very grateful. So thank you, Lacy.
Thank you, Marie.
For the conversation today, and thank you for our awesome audience here. Join us again in the podcast this month, and we hope you have a great day and a great week. Blessings, everyone.